Welcome to Sane-ish, the podcast for people healing from trauma, addiction, abuse, mental health struggles, grief, narcissists, and every other flavor of chaos life can throw at you. And somehow, still functioning, mostly. I'm your host, Holly Broughton, survivor, truth teller, boundary setter, and proud member of the Still Healing, Still Hilarious Club. Around here, we don't do shame or embarrassment. We don't do perfection. Just real talk, dark humor, hard truths, and a whole lot of hope. Because sanity is overrated. And healing, that shit is messy. This is Sane-ish. Let's get into it. Disclaimer. On the Sane-ish podcast, we discuss personal stories of alcoholism, addiction, mental health, chronic illness, narcissistic abuse, domestic violence, SA, HT, parental alienation, grief, loss, homelessness, as well as many other forms of adversities in life. Our intention is to be inspirational, educational, identifiable, and resourceful. The views and experiences shared are in no way meant to praise or condone any illegal or harmful behavior. This content is for educational purposes only and not intended as professional advice. If you or someone you know is struggling with any of the above, we strongly suggest seeking help from a qualified professional, support service, or hotline related to your specific issue. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Sane-ish podcast. Holly Broughton here. And today I have a guest who is joining us all the way from Australia. And it's 5:30 morning there. And she has graciously offered to do this podcast with me. I have Hannah Dalby, and she has walked through this road of recovery, and she's got a very interesting journey. And she was actually an athlete. And Hannah, please help me with the
Muay Thai.
Muay Thai. Okay, I knew the Thai part. I just didn't know how to pronounce the Muay part. So anyway, she was an athlete and an entrepreneur, business owner, and then got involved in drugs and, I guess, perfectionism, and then things went downhill. But today, she's also a business owner, but her business is recovery. So I'm pretty much going to turn it over to her and have her tell her story and, where she grew up, like straight from the beginning, and have her give her hope and inspiration. So Hannah, welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so, I'll change that story a little bit because it wasn't getting into drugs in the middle of it. It started out in the drugs, right? So, I grew up in South Australia. It was not a bad childhood whatsoever. My parents divorced when I was about 8, which I think was a catalyst for a lot of stuff that happened. I lived mostly with my dad, and he had a girlfriend that was horrendous. So, pretty early on. I was also really high function, really highly intelligent. I was skipped grades in school. I was trying to put into IB schools. So I was, if I had followed the path that I was supposed to follow, I would have finished high school at 14. But it was a difficult thing for me to reconcile with this, how do I have connection and friends and also be super intelligent? And I didn't really fit into the system. So I was running businesses very early. I think my first business, I was about 8. My first proper business, I was 14, making rave pants. And I was out partying at the raves and doing all these sorts of things. So I found drugs quite early. And when I was 18, my boyfriend died in a car accident, which was probably the precedent for like what happens for the next, 6 years. But I was still, like no one really ever knew about it. So I was still really high performing. I was in sales, from the day I turned 18. I ended up being gifted my own office, in a different state. I moved north in Australia, was running my own sales team, and eventually, moved from there. I was doing, really, really high level sales stuff, moving around the country, had run away from, my hometown, I suppose. Like, I'm done with that. I don't want to feel any of that stuff that was going on. I was just A-line running, different town, different place, different town, different place. I bought my first house when I was 20, bought my second house when I was 24. So I was property investing, making very good money. But underneath of it all, I was still taking a lot of drugs, living this kind of double life. Even at 20 years, so 20 years old, I started training. I found a Muay Thai gym, and this was, probably the thing that saved the addiction, because I now had this thing that meant I had to be somewhat healthy. Not that I gave it up for quite a few years after that. So around about 24, I decided, or maybe even earlier than that, I decided that having a job was a terrible idea, because they were going to tell me what I had to do, when I had to do it. And the environment of it was, I was really good at what I did, and they wanted to control how I did it. And in my mind, I was like, well, I'm really good at this in my own way, so don't tell me what to do. So there's a lot of anti-authority that I had in my system, which I had from very early. I fought teachers. I fought every authority along the way, telling everyone I knew better. I know how to do better. Like, I'm not following your rules. Screw you. And so I started my first, I suppose, third business when I was 24. And that was it. I promised myself I'd never go back to work again. I'd never have a job again. And I haven't. And around that time, everything started to, I suppose, get worse from the addiction point of view. I was dating drug addicts. I was in domestic violence situations. I was in financial abuse situations, but it was very secret. So I still was training. I was still, winning Australian championships in random martial arts, getting my black belts, getting all this stuff, running this marketing business. And then at home, like, serious stuff was going on, which I told no one about. So it was not until, I suppose, maybe 2 or 3 years ago that I told my parents, that I told anyone what was happening. So this is, we're going back over 10 years now. So I decided at some point, I'm going to die if I don't give this up, not because of the drugs, but because of the people that I keep getting involved with, because of the lifestyle that I keep living. It's, and it's getting worse. I keep ending up in these relationships. I keep ending up in these situations. I was, held hostage with a knife. I was thrown on a coffee table. I was shot at. Like, it was just getting worse and worse and worse. So I made the decision to get clean, and I told no one. Me and a partner at the time decided to do it together, and I went back home for 18 months, still told no one about it. Just, I'm just coming home for a little while, rebranded my business. And in that time, turned it into something that I was really quite proud of. And then came back up to Queensland, where I was living for the, previous 6 years, and went back to training, went professional. And now I was, I had a new addiction that I could use instead. So I put the drugs down, and, professional fighting, and I still had my marketing business, meant that I could now escape from everything by running a huge amount of kilometers every day, and running my business, and training at nighttime. So that was between, I suppose, 26 and 30 was just endless training. Actually, during that time, decided to go back to university, and my intention was to become a neuroscientist, all at exactly the same time.
So basically, you're a workaholic.
Trainer, anything to escape, right? Not that I knew this at the time. So at the time, I think I'm achieving so much. Look at me go. Look at me be an athlete, win all my fights, and run this business, and go to university. So in my mind, I was doing very, very well. That was the lie that I had told myself, the justification that I had told myself. And at about 30, maybe 31, I went on an ayahuasca journey, and it was like, at that time I'd already started the first version of the business that I have now. So I had 2 businesses and was, professionally fighting, which was insane, like absolutely insane. And so I had to make a decision, like, am I going to just punch people in the face for a living, or am I going to actually, honor this business, which my dad had actually helped me start. We were doing it together. So I decided to put fighting down, and realized pretty quickly that I had an eating disorder, that my digestion was screwed, my hormones were screwed, I was in complete burnout. I hadn't dealt with anything, any of my pain or traumas properly, that I had no connection in my life. So since then, it's been this journey of, okay, well, how do I actually put down all of the things that I use as an addiction and as an escape? And how do I actually come back into connection with myself? And how do I actually come back into connection with other people? Which is now what the business has become. So, it started out as sports recovery, cryotherapy, compression, sauna. And now the core of it is deep somatic emotional processing to undo all of the traumas and the patterns and the nervous system, somatic charges that have been keeping people stuck, that have been keeping them in addiction or keeping them in relationship patterns or blocking their capacity for money or blocking their capacity for business or keeping their voice stuck. So it's turned from, yes, a little bit of sports recovery into, well, how do we actually shift culture by dealing with our shit?
All right. So, yeah. So do you want to go into that? Let me ask you this first. So tell us, since you're in Australia, tell us what alcoholism and addiction looks like in Australia. What is the major drug in Australia right now?
Ice would be the main drug in Australia. I don't think it would be too different from the US, to be honest. There's a lot of drinking. There's a tall poppy syndrome in Australia that is, we're the Aussie battler, right? We suffer, we do the hard toll. And so there's a big drinking culture that comes from that. However, the stats now show that there's less people drinking than ever before, that the younger generation is drinking less than anyone ever has. The alcohol companies are now having to make non-alcoholic beverages because people aren't drinking so much. And that's not to say that it doesn't exist. There's still a big pub culture, a big drinking culture, and there is a really big drug problem. And most of it is ice. Yes, there's lots of weed smokers and things like that, but ice has been the predominant problem in Australia.
Okay, because here it seems to be fentanyl.
Right.
Now, do you find that, because here it seems like a lot of the drugs right now seem to be cut with God knows what? Like people don't, is that the same there too? Okay. So let me ask you this too. Does there seem to be any help in the Australian government as far as recovery, or do you find that there's not?
I don't think much of the help that exists works.
Okay. Yeah.
So, there are drug and alcohol counselors. And the problem that I have with that is you can do an online course or go do a quick weekend course or a quick little thing and become a drug and alcohol counselor. I think that if you haven't been there and done that, how can you possibly understand what these people are going through? How can you meet them on their level? They're not going to, it's hard to listen to someone that hasn't been there, done that. I think there's more drugs in rehab than out of rehab. I think that, rehab is a problem. Yes, a detox center can be really useful to actually detox, but what rehab is doing is putting you in an environment where you're never going to be triggered, where there's none of the outside things that have led you into you don't have the social environments, you don't have the pressures, you don't have the outside world pressures. You're just in this little box. No shit, you can stay clean inside of there. Who's actually helping you undo the things that you're running away from in the first place? Because all addiction, if it's drugs or alcohol or work or sex or training or whatever it is, well, I can't be with myself. I can't be with my feelings. It's too much to experience this and I need to escape it all of the time. So until that is actually processed and dealt with and someone can be present with themselves and what's happening for themselves, they're always going to go back to it. So unless someone's actually dealing with that properly inside of rehab, which it's not, it's, here's a way to, a place you can be stuck in where you can't get access to things. And then let's see what happens when you go out into the world. Good luck with all the triggers. Good luck with all the family dynamics. Good luck with all the social pressures. It doesn't work very well.
Right.
So I think the success rate of rehab is maybe 1 or 2%. The success rate of AA and NA is 1 or 2%. It doesn't work.
So tell us what your program does. So, and make sure you tell us what your business name is and all that.
Yeah. So the business is The Jungle. To be honest, we don't do a lot of drug addiction or alcohol addiction. I made that choice consciously because there's detoxes that are required sometimes. However, lots of high functioning addicts, absolutely. Because we need to be able to do it in the environment that they're in. And I just made a personal choice of like, I don't want to have that chaos in my life.
Right.
But I absolutely have clients that are high functioning addicts, that have businesses that are doing really well, that have got serious addiction going on underneath. And, and that can be drugs and alcohol. But, a lot of the addiction that I work with is workaholics. Like, I can't put the work down. I can't come back and connect with my partner because I want to escape. And so what we do inside of it is like deal with the body as a whole. But the most important part is, can we go into the body where these traumas are sitting and where the emotional charges are sitting? Like, can we get you out of your head for a minute and actually into the body? And it's not nice, right? So to deal with something properly, you have to go towards it. And addicts have spent their entire life running away from it. And so the idea of, just go spend some time in nature, just read a lovely book, you're still trying to escape from the feeling. We need to go towards the pain so it can actually be felt and understood and released. So then it no longer sits in the system. And we need to do it so it's somatic. And so then the cognitive brain understands. And then the cognitive brain stops applying this old trauma or situation with the things that are happening in the real world and can start to differentiate from it. And you don't, over time, you don't get the somatic charge in the body and understand that this is not what's happening right now. So an example, someone I know thinks that, it's very, very serious addict, thinks that every time someone laughs, it's laughing at him and, he's being attacked and everything is wrong about him, which is just some really old thing that's been looping for a really long time. Sounds really basic, but causes him so much anxiety that it's like, I have to be high because it's way too much. And so these are the things that actually need to be dealt with. At the very same time, there is very useful tools like eating enough food and eating good food and not eating sugar and actually exercising and getting the dopamine and endorphins and serotonin from connection. Like, all of those things put together at exactly the same time creates the perfect environment to be able to let this stuff go.
Right. And I totally understand that because I've had trauma where I've been in fight or flight. And so certain triggers put my body in that my nervous system kicks off. So I totally get that. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So what made you focus on like those somatic, parts of the body? Was it your training, or was it more your training, or was it more your addiction? What guided you that direction? What more so got you?
It was a complete accident, to be honest. I had been trained in psychotherapy by a friend who wanted her own therapist. So she trained me in what she did. I had been trained in plant medicine facilitation. So I had these tools there that they were just there that I used amongst the circle that I had. It wasn't really a business by any means. And I had done a lot of work with a lot of different people and I got somewhere, right? Didn't do nothing. I got somewhere. It just took a really long time. And I guess it was a natural progression for me to really comprehend why something would need to be in the body. What I noticed in the spiritual plant medicine world, or lots of the spiritual modalities, it was still a level of escapism. It was like, we can just connect up here, just high vibe, just connect with, God and this. And it's like, you're still escaping what is real in the body and what is real in 3D. And I guess that was a natural thing for my brain to understand. Being an athlete is like, hang on, being an athlete and being a business owner that still felt like escapism to me. Mm-hmm. Because we actually do need to come into the real world and we do want to achieve things and we do want to create businesses and have, worldly experiences and be connected with our body and what is our body capable of and what is our human capable of. And so that felt like a lot of escapism. It was beautiful and I got lots out of it, but there was something missing for me. And so it was actually a friend of mine. We did some work together, which was very, very fast. And this is where the somatic, actually processing with the somatics deeply. And there was some other stuff that was linked inside of this, which was, well, how much work has the other person done? Is that nervous system actually regulated? Is the person holding you, have they done the stuff that you're trying to get to? Can you actually co-regulate with them? And are they holding you there, or are they in their own escapism? So there's a lot of stuff that was kind of looped into this when I started doing this with this friend. And so we developed this process together, bringing in the stuff that I knew, that he knew, and kind of tested it on clients, on each other, and developed what we have now, which is a very big blend of lots of the stuff that exists. Like no one created anything new. It's like, what happens if we bring in all these different modalities and the good parts of it and throw away all the fluff, all the pathologizing, all the projection. We don't need to sage something for it to work. We don't need to talk about it in woo-woo language for it to work. We need to get into the body.
Is that the only thing that you do there, or are there other things that you offer?
Yeah. So in our clinic, we have cryotherapy and compression therapy and infrared sauna, aerial yoga, strength training. So like in clinic, we have all of that. Most of the work that we do is online though. So we work all over the world and most of it's done online, right? So our clients still get access to our strength coach. We still do food coaching. Like we teach people how to eat for their hormones, to clean out their system, to create a body that's going to have energy, that has brain function, that's going to live a long time, all really customized to what a specific person needs. It's very different for a woman than it is for a man. It's very different if you're trying to build a certain body, if you're not, if you're working really hard, if you're like, it's very, very personal. So we blend all of that together. And the idea is, can we create a whole human? Can we create a whole human that has the capacity to be everything they've ever wanted to be?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. That's great. And so it's available for everyone, like worldwide.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to ask you a few questions here that I set up for our audience. When you were an athlete, were you trained to push through the pain?
Yeah.
Okay. So that also kind of helped you, and now that we're talking about somatics, that probably made you push that pain down to where now you know how to work through those via somatic.
Well, it's an interesting thing, right? Because it's a double-edged sword in the way of actually the human can do way more than you would believe if you get the mind to do so. And it's a good skill to learn, right? It's a good skill to learn discipline and that you can actually do more than what you think that you can. The mind will give out before the body. Yeah. And that's really useful in a lot of situations. It's when it's done over and over and over again over years that you burn yourself out. And burnout, like people talk about, oh yeah, I'm burnt out. But burnout is serious. Burnout takes years to recover from. And eventually turns into diseases that are really hard to recover from. So it's not a small thing to be in burnout at all. So I love the fact that I was given this experience. I love the fact that in a situation where I have to push past something that feels difficult, I have it within me to do. Right. That's a beautiful thing. I probably just should have given myself some space. I probably should have had a down season,
Yeah.
Rather than just like 10 years straight, never stopping.
Yeah. Well, I guess people have to find their balance at some point. It's not, I think everybody has a moment in time where they find their balance. Not everybody, so they just go. I did. I was a workaholic too. And I just kept going. I went 150 miles an hour and then,
I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Like I'm going 150 miles an hour right now in my business, or maybe 120, right? Like 2 months ago, I was at 150 and I had to like put on the brakes and go like, okay, and step back for a little second. And now I'm pushing a little hard again. But it's like, it's not like, okay, this is how I'm going to operate forever. And if I'm going to operate like this, it means that I go to bed and I get my 8 or 9 hours of sleep and I eat perfectly and I make sure I get training and my Sundays are nothing. It's like, I can push that hard if I like completely and utterly take care of myself because I'm making a conscious decision to push this hard for a purpose with an end date.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course, but there's some self-care in there too.
Yeah,
obviously, you've got self-care in there, whereas before it was just it was on.
Except that I thought that there was self-care. So in my brain, I had convinced myself that because the food in my fridge was the healthiest food you've ever seen, that it was self-care. But I was actually starving. I had convinced myself that because it was running and because it was exercise, that it was self-care, but I was overdoing it. I had convinced myself that all of these things were self-care in some way. Like I still went and got massages and went and did recovery and I did these things. There was just this like inability to be able to feel when it was enough. And even if I could feel when it was enough, I had external people around me going, don't care, get up, keep going. And so I had to override those feelings. And so eventually it was like, who cares? Shove it down. I mean, I remember days getting out of bed and I couldn't walk. Like I was in so much pain that I couldn't walk, and I would put on shoes and make myself run.
Yeah.
And like, that's a brilliant thing as a like, all right, well, now I know that when I'm in the ring, I can be nearly broken and I'll keep going. It's just that I did it for way, way, way too long.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's not good. Okay, so when you were winning all of those, when you were winning all the time, was that like good for your ego, or how did that play on your ego? What was it good to a point, or was it like, are you humbled by it now? Does that make sense? Does that question make sense? Like, how is your relationship with with winning and competition and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So, I mean, look, I think there's nothing wrong with ego, and that we need to have a healthy dose of it because it's what helps us achieve things. And I think throwing it in the bin isn't really helpful either. Less than ego, more the winning was about approval and about self-worth. So I didn't feel like I was worthy of anything unless I was winning something. I didn't feel like I could get, and it's daddy's approval. At the end of the day, I need this daddy's approval, which is what I was trying to get from the external world. I didn't feel like I could have connection unless I was winning something. It's how I created connection in my life. Look, I'm winning. Now I have people around me. Look, I'm winning. Now I have attention. Look, I'm winning. Now I have approval. Look, I'm winning. Like now I'm worthy. I feel like I'm worthy internally. So because of that, I was always chasing the win. The win would happen. I couldn't fully receive it. And so it would be a day and I would feel like shit again because I'm like, okay, well now I have to get a different win. So it was like straight back, let's go, next win. Like it was, I remember when I won my Queensland title and it was like the next day I was like, fuck, okay, what am I going to do now? Like booking the next fight. I have to have something that I'm, working towards or the next thing because I couldn't really let it land.
Yeah. Yeah. It's an addiction there. That must be an addiction too. Because, you're chasing the next high.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah. So looking back at your businesses or whatever, what signs were you ignoring as far as the burnout?
So I think the biggest one is the lack of connection and this fiery, just resentment at everyone and resentment at the world. And I think resentment will often come from you're not taking care of yourself. Like my actual needs aren't being met. So if anything went wrong, if someone got in my way, it's like, I'm angry, I'm resentful, you're the problem. And because I was living in this state of I can just keep doing all the things, and I, probably took care of myself better in some ways than some people would because nutrition was extremely important to me. I didn't eat enough, but I ate good food. And so I was still capable of doing all of these things. If you really look at it from a business perspective, I guess this business, I let it crash and burn quite a few times. And I would pendulate between being an athlete and a business owner. One would get all the attention and the other would get all the attention. I couldn't quite hold both of the things because I would just run out of energy and then blame everyone else. So this whole like everyone else is the problem. They screwed it up. They didn't get it right. You're in my way, which is this external resentment that I was placing on the outside world, which was actually about myself and not giving myself what I needed.
All right. Well, how do you think society sometimes rewards unhealthy levels of productivity?
I think in every way that it exists.
Well, I do too, by the way.
The lone wolf grind, hustle, it's the badge of honor. I'm so busy. Look at me. I'm so busy. I'm so amazing. Look at me. I haven't slept all week and I've done these things. I'm so amazing. Look at me. I've worked 90 days in a row. I've it's in everything everywhere. Like this
Yeah.
reward, this gratification for doing this extremely hard thing, for pushing past. And there is something beautiful about it, right? Like, don't get me wrong. There is something beautiful about doing something that other people are not willing to do, doing something that you haven't been able to do before. But the busyness has become a badge of honor. The hustle has become a badge of honor. They're like, I'm running 7 businesses and being an athlete and doing all of this. It's like, oh, wow, you're so amazing. And it's like, how's your relationship? How's your health going? Like, because if I look onto right? Like,
Yes.
how are you
Absolutely.
treating the people around you right now? How are you treating your children? How are you treating your partner? How are you treating your team? Because if you're doing all that stuff and you're fried and burnt out, like, how are you showing up to the people around you? Can you actually be present with them? Can you actually hear what they need? Because I was terrible at that. I blocked out every single person around me, screamed and yelled and cried, and everyone was an asshole because I couldn't actually be present with myself. So there's no way I could be present with them.
Right.
And my health, it looked pretty, right? I had a 6-pack. I was super fit, but I had no period. My digestion was not even turned on. I had not enough fuel to function, to fuel my brain. I was getting autoimmune diseases. And it was just like, look amazing. So who cares? So it's like, what's actually going on underneath of this? Because it looks all well and good on Instagram, but what's the rest of your life look like?
Right. And that's what I always tell people. Like, I have no desire to compare myself to anybody because you have absolutely no idea what's going on in that person's life. Like, it may look good, but that doesn't mean it is. It really doesn't. So
that's now the promise to myself, right? It's like, yes, I will achieve, but never at the cost of my relationships and never at the cost of my health. So, can I create something? Can I create this thing that I've set out to create in a way that I don't lose my relationships and I don't lose my health? And that's,
right.
That's the thing that I'm always looking at. So 2 weeks ago, I didn't have good sleep for a week and everyone around me felt it. 1 week, everyone around me felt it. And I felt it. So it's like, okay, so nothing gets pushed until I catch up on my sleep and I'm feeling better again. Because if I push through this and I just keep ignoring it, what happens in 2 months, 3 months next year? If I'm treating people like this now, how am I going to treat people in 6 months if I keep pushing? That has to come first.
Right. Of course. Okay. So you describe patterns of avoidance. What were the emotions or experiences you found most difficult to sit with?
Grief.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a big one.
Yeah. It was the original escapism, right? So I guess the grief of the parents' divorce, the grief and the feeling of being alone. So the grief and loneliness, I suppose, are the two really big things. And I remember not wanting to admit that I felt lonely. Like, I found it really disgusting. Like, there was a deep sense of shame and disgust that I could feel lonely.
Oh.
So there was grief there around my parents and, my dad choosing the girlfriend and my partner dying and all of this. There was lots of grief that I had not processed. And so to sit with that, I remember experiencing it, but to really sit with that was very difficult. And then this feeling of loneliness, which I'd had from a very early age, being undiagnosed ADHD and autism, I didn't really fit in anywhere. This is why I was skipping grades and doing all this. Like, I was super highly intelligent with a brain that didn't work the way that everyone else's brain worked in a, social environment where I was really young, but really smart. I didn't really kind of fit. And so no matter what I was doing, it's why I was out partying at 14, running a business in this rave scene, because I needed people 10 years older than me to kind of feel like I belonged somewhere. But I didn't really belong there either because I was still a kid. So there was a deep sense of loneliness, but I could not admit it to myself or to anyone else. I found it really So that was probably the biggest one that was like to reconcile. And even now, it's a feeling that I get being, an entrepreneur, a leader of this thing, someone that's doing things that other people don't do. It's a lonely experience sometimes because the amount that you hold, the things that no one can ever understand it. My team is absolutely in this with me. My partner is absolutely in this with me, but they're never going to understand the level of sacrifice that I actually go through, the level of hard work that I actually go through. They're not going to get it. And that's a lonely experience. And it's only been quite recently that I've been able to acknowledge and sit with, yes, I've found ways to not have so much loneliness, to allow connection in, to allow love in, to allow belonging in, but there's still a sense of it. And can I just be with it and know that it's there and that's okay to feel it?
Yeah. And not only that, grief is pretty complex just because there's 5 stages of it. And in my experience, it never goes away because it always creeps up at random times. So
I think it can go away if it's expressed properly. I've had quite a few clients that have come through with serious grief, and it's just, it has to be processed to the core of it.
well, I mean, yeah, and it depends on the person too. I guess I should say it depends. So, yeah. So, how do you recognize today when you're slipping back into avoidance if you do, rather than addressing someone directly?
What do you mean by addressing someone directly?
Well, how do you recognize if you're slipping back into avoidance, like avoiding something instead of like addressing that person directly by like me saying, "Hey, Hannah," instead of, "Well, I'll just talk to her tomorrow about it."
So I don't do that very much anymore. Like, from a perspective of talking to other people, I've become very good at it because it's one of the highest values in my business. And the people that I spend the most time with are my team and my partner. And we're very close knit. And, the number one thing I want to avoid is drama triangles. And drama triangles happen because you avoid conversations. So I'm pretty good at that now. I think the thing that I would avoid the most is myself. Like, I can slip back into avoiding myself and my own needs and my own feelings. And, it happens. It happens over the week when I have a back-to-back calendar for 5 days straight, and then I've avoided some kind of feeling that's come up along the way. I'll notice it if I'm starting to reach for snacks all of the time, or I'm looking for some kind of dopamine. There's something that I haven't sat with. So if I'm like a little bit antsy between sessions, or the end of the day or the weekend comes and I'm like uncomfortable in the nothing, there is something that I have avoided. And I combat this with doing my own work and my own sessions and making sure that I'm always, coming back into my body and hearing myself. It still happens. It still happens if I miss that session. It still happens if I have back-to-back things for the entire week and the end of the week comes and, it's still sitting there. It's still sitting there from the start of the week. If I go a couple of weeks without actually coming into presence with myself, absolutely I can start to avoid myself and avoid what I truly need and start to justify, oh, well, I can't because of work and I can't because of this. And, I will very quickly notice that my energy will start to drop, or my ability to respond instead of react will start to shift. And if I'm starting to get really reactive at people or reactive at situations, what have I missed? I know that if I don't train, if I miss training over the weekend, or I miss getting my heart rate up, I can get a little bit snarky. And, so these are the things that I can't avoid doing. I must take care of myself in this way. If I haven't eaten enough food and I'm, yeah, but I'm just busy, like, it's not okay because there's a consequence for it.
Yeah. So what do you notice between men, like working with men and then working with women? Is there a difference as far as how they respond to the somatic work?
Sometimes yes and sometimes no. So I guess men have had the experience a lot deeper than we have in don't express your emotions, shove it down, be stoic, be a man. And so it can be a lot more confronting to bring this stuff up. And sometimes it won't happen straight away. Sometimes it can take a few weeks for them to come back into presence with their body. We'll run a session and they might get the emotional response a day or two later. And then sometimes not. Sometimes it's right there and it's all ready to be expressed and it's all ready to come to the surface. And all they needed was someone to actually hold the space and someone to actually take them there for it to be okay. I do find that men will process more internally. Women can scream and cry and have a massive, expression. And sometimes men will still feel it and process and do a little bit quieter. And sometimes not. I think, we are emotional beings in the same way that has this stuff that needs to be expressed. And then there needs to be a level of expression that, can be loud and can be dramatic. And that needs, that at some point they were a child that needed to get this out in this way. And that needs to come out sometimes. I guess the difference once we've done this work between men and women is that women are fundamentally more emotional creatures and they're going to express, just through life, whether they've dealt with their stuff or not. Like, even having dealt with all of my stuff, I'm still really emotional being, and I'm going to have expression. I'm going to want to cry. I'm going to want to get this out. Whereas men will sit and feel it and stay with it. And yes, they can sit and feel. Yeah, they might cry. Yeah, they might need to go punch the hell out of something, contrain. It's just a different level of expression.
Yeah. Do you think women face unique pressures to have it all together? And how did that influence your addiction?
I don't think it's unique.
I mean, you kind of touched on it earlier, but
yeah, I don't think it's maybe it's a unique pressure. I think men have a really big pressure to have it all together and to never be emotional. I think the pressure for women is be a mother and go to work and be a partner and, and have it all together. I think culture as a whole has taught us that we're not supposed to be emotional and we're supposed to be just regulate your nervous system and be zen all of the time. And it's like, that's not what it is. We're human existence that are meant to experience the whole range of emotions. When did we make it wrong to be sad? When did we make it wrong to be angry? When did we make it wrong to feel jealous or shame or envy or any, like, they're valid emotions and they need to be expressed. When did we make it wrong to have all of this? I guess for me, I grew up with a father that probably didn't really want me to be a woman in a sense. Maybe it was a protection mechanism from his path. How do I make her really tough to survive the world? But I wasn't taught how to surrender. I wasn't taught how to be soft. I lived with him from when I was 12. No one gave me the tools of what it is to be a woman. And my mother's very suppressed as well, doesn't express anything. So I didn't get that learning. And I was taught to be tough. I was taught to go out and take on the world and be tough and beat all the boys and do all this sort of thing. So it wasn't necessarily about, as a woman, having it all together. I was just taught as a child to be tough in the world, and that's how you'll survive. So I had to undo that conditioning and reconcile with the shame around having emotions. And so sometimes that's still a thing, right? Like I still feel a bit strange that a couple of times a week I'm having an emotional meltdown. And it's just like, I know now though that all I need to do is fully experience it and it goes away and it's gone.
Yeah. Well, I think social media doesn't help, to be honest with you. I mean, I guess people are pressured into making it look like they have it all together when they really don't. So just that's just my opinion. So if you could sit down with your younger self before drugs became a problem, what would you tell her?
Your number one goal is to figure out a way to have connection.
Nice. Yeah. So what were drugs and workaholism and all of the stuff that you were searching for or that you were running towards promising you that they couldn't actually deliver?
Success and going really fast and a sense of achievement and happiness. I guess, in some ways it was self-medication, right? Like the particular drugs that I was taking allowed me to have a single thought, allowed me to be really productive, made, the things that I find really difficult, really easy. I could, in my brain, it can be 10,000 things at once. I take the drugs and I can hyper focus on this one thing and just get all the stuff done. In my mind, I was like, this is great because I can now have a job, have a business, renovate my houses and be an athlete. And like, this is amazing. I can do all of these things at once. And I actually did build an amazing life on the outside from that. It's just that I lost connection to myself and I lost connection to my heart, which means I lost connection to all of the people around me. And what's the point in building this amazing thing if I don't have people to share it with? What's the point in having the business and the money and the success if I don't have a deep connection, if I don't have love, if I don't have someone to share it with at a deep level? It's pointless.
Right. What does a meaningful life look like to you today?
Meaningful is doing something that's like of purpose. What am I doing that's going to make an impact in my life, in the people that I love's life, and in the world at large life? So if it's going to be meaningful, it's, did I make some kind of shift? Did I make someone's life better? Did I make my purpose is large, right? Like, can I shift culture in my lifetime? That's kind of meaningful.
Yeah, for sure. All right. If someone listening feels trapped between outward success and inward suffering, what would you want them to know?
That you can have both things. And actually, the inward connection will allow you to build something greater anyway.
All right. Well, I appreciate you sharing your story, Hannah. And I know it's been It's been a ride to try to get together.
Yeah.
But I appreciate it, and I'm glad that we finally did. Thank you so much for sharing your story. And by the way, mention your business. Hannah's going to give me all of the info, and I'll put it in the episode description so that you can get in contact with her if you want to take some of her courses and everything. But go ahead, Hannah.
Yeah, so the business is The Jungle. The website is thejungle.net.au, and the Instagram is at Recovery Jungle.
All right. So there's that. But anyway, thank you, Hannah. I'm so grateful for you and the work that you do.
And thank you for having me, Polly.
Yeah, and especially doing somatics, because I do that as well, and it's a very big help.
Yeah,
so
beautiful. Awesome.
Yeah, so thank you so much.
Thanks, Holly.
Yeah, thank you. And for those of you watching, thank you for watching, and please stay tuned for the next episode. So take care.